Okay, so if you're teaching a dog recall from scratch, or if your dog is okay at recall, but there are those certain things, those certain environments, or those certain distractions, like other dogs, that they can't be recalled from, this is what we're going to use. We're going to use a long line. And this isn't just a management tool to stop your dogs getting to something that they've got to be on for the rest of their lives. This is training. We're going to teach them to come back to us, make our recall rock solid, and the long line is the tool to do it. So in this video I'm going to show you how to use a long line properly. I'm going to show you how to use your long line with some training exercises. I'm going to go through the different types of long line and which ones I would recommend buying. I'm going to show you how to use your long line when your recall fails, and at the end of the video I'm going to put a couple of troubleshooting things of common problems that come up when using a long line. If your dog is on a long line, make sure it's attached to a harness and not a collar, because if your dog builds up some momentum and they hit the end of the long line and you've still got hold of it, that could really hurt their neck. And we don't want to be hurting our dogs during training. There is a couple of clips in this video where you'll see our long line connected to a collar. That's because I really trusted those dogs in those environments. Now the first thing to understand is a long line is as long as you need it to be. If you have an extra long line, we want to make it short to start with, and we do this by gathering up our long line into these nice big loops. And you'll look like a bit of a prat, but let's practice without a dog on the end, just practicing gathering up the loops and then letting the line out again, one loop at a time, and then gathering the line up again. This way you're not going to be troubled with a dog that's not used to it getting tangled up in it or biting it. Then you want to put your dog on the end of that line. Make sure you're in a low distraction environment to start with, and then again practice looping up, letting out the loops, reeling the dog back in these nice big loops. Now you're going to want to have some treats ready, and I want some nice high value treats for this exercise to start with. We really want you to be really worth coming back to. Okay, with our dog on our long line and our long line collected up into its loops, so you've only got a very short lead really to start with, you're going to say your recall cue, come, then drop a treat by your foot. Come. With the dog so close, there's no way your dog can fail. Come. Come. Every time you have a successful repetition, we're going to let out another loop. Okay, let's say you're around about 3 meters long line, 3 loops let out, let's say. Now when you call your dog back to you, you say come and drop a treat. I want you to take a few treats, you can make them really small, and scatter them into some grass. Your dog's nose is going to go down, look for the grass, and this is going to give you time to let another loop out and walk away from your dog. Say come, scatter some more treats, let out another loop, off you go in another direction. Practice this until you've reached the end of your long line. Congratulations, you've reached the end of your long line. If your dog is still coming back to you, carry on. Maybe drop that long line if you're in a safe environment to do so, and increase that distance. So if you're at the stage when you're letting your lead trail, you can use these exercises to make as much distance as you like. Kira, come! Good girl. If your dog isn't coming back to you every time, reduce the loop. So if your dog doesn't come back at 4 loops, reel back into 3 or 2, set them up for success every time. If your dog is very distracted by something else, you need to be more distracting than the thing they are looking at. So wave your arms in the air, be really high pitched with your voice, get their attention. Okay, let's take this on the move. Recall your dog when they get to the end of the long line and make yourself extremely exciting to come back to, maybe even backing away in the other direction so your dog chases you. Whatever you do, make sure this game is really fun for you and your dog. This is dog training, it's not coal mining, it's not meant to be a chore. This is good fun. And if it's fun, your dog will come back to you more often. Now this is my friend Roy, he's a greyhound, and I did a session with him and his family the other day on recall. And at the end of the session, this is how in tune to his recall cue he was, just because we spend an hour playing games. But it started at the beginning, using the long line to ensure the success, starting with 1 loop, 2 loops, 3 loops, and so on and so forth. We set him up for success, and we conditioned that recall cue, that come, to mean amazing things are going to happen by my feet when you hear that word. Okay, so before we get into some more long line exercises and recall exercises, I want to go through the type of long lines that are available to buy and what I would recommend and what I have. So, to start with, you can get the really cheap nylon lines like this one. Now, to be honest, if you've got a small dog, it might be absolutely fine. But with the nylon line, you're going to get hand burn quite a bit if you're going to let it pass through your fingers. And the clip is really, really cheap. I can't see that lasting a long time if I used it for recall. Perfectly acceptable for a house line on a puppy maybe. The next type is the one I really like, and this is a lunge line for a horse. You can get them for dogs. It's just a padded fabric line. It's nice and comfortable in your hands. If it's a horsey lunge line like my one, it's going to have a very big clip on it, so it's good for bigger dogs. If you've got a small dog, they might not want that hanging off their collar. But it's very nice, but the trouble with them, the trouble with these is if it's raining, and it tends to here in the southwest of England, it will collect everything. It will be twice as heavy by the end of your session, maybe even more. It collects all the mud and takes ages to dry, and it is a nightmare. Other than that, if it's dry, they're fine. Next up is our biothane line. Now this won't collect all that water and filth. It will be nice and strong, can be a bit expensive, but it's still a really good option to go for. But recently I found a fourth option. This is by a company called Hound Grip. It's strong, but it's lightweight. It's got this rubber webbings that doesn't collect water, and they're a Welsh company, so they know a little bit about the rain, and it's really comfortable to hold. So this kind of ticks all the boxes for a really good long line. Now this is not a sponsored video by them, but I do have a discount code which is in the description if you wanted to get yourself one. Now when doing your recall exercises, incorporating your long line should be easy to do for any of recall exercise really. You could try the fulcrum recall exercise, so just a treat on the nose, chuck it over there. When she's finished it, Kira, come. Good girl. Throw the other treat in the opposite direction when she's finished eating it. Come. Good. Let out a bit more line every time. Come. Kira, come. But here's the magic of a long line. You'll notice in any of my exercises, I only say the recall cue once. If my dogs ignore me, I don't repeat the cue. I set them up for success, slowly build up the distance and then the distractions, and slowly build it up. There's going to get a point where my dog's going to ignore me and I've gone a little bit too far too quickly, I've added the distractions too high, or the distance is too much. The long line helps you not repeat that cue. So instead of repeating my cue, I'm not going to use my long line to pull my dog towards me. What I'm going to do, I'm going to walk myself down the line towards my dog. I could start calling my dog, making some noises, making distraction noises, see if the dog's going to come back to me. But if not, if that thing is way too distracting, I'm going to go right to my dog's nose. I'm going to put a treat right on the end, and I'm going to lure my dog back to where I wanted them in the first place. Then I'll reset the exercise, I'll make it a little bit easier, maybe I'll take myself a little further away from that distracting thing, or make my long line a little shorter. Now let's say your dog is coming back to you every single time when they're on their long line. Is it time to let them off their long line? In this environment, maybe, but let's practice with the long line. Let's go back to square one, but let's make the environment far more distracting. Let's go train them in that place you never thought they'd come back to you. Do it with a long line. Build it back up. Now if your dog's big distraction is other dogs, I would start with a toy dog, a fluffy dog at a distance, and then close that distance. Then I take my long line recall exercises to a place I know where I can see other dogs at a good distance. Then I'm going to slowly close the distance over time. You see how we're slowly building up the difficulty with distance and distractions with our recall, setting them up for success every time and slowly building to that goal, whatever your goal is, whether it's I want to call my dog away from another dog, I want to call him away from other people. We're slowly building up to that goal, step by step. Okay, so here's a couple of common problems people don't like about using a long line. And the first one is your dog getting in a tangle. So if your dog is tangling themselves up and they're in a mummified state, we're not going to just go around and try and pull this leg and pull that leg. What you want it to do, I want you to drop the whole line, keep end of one, step away and call your dog out and then loop it back up. Let them step out of the tangle. And my last point in this video is dogs that bite the lead and use it as a bit of a tug toy, and just don't give in. Don't turn it into a game. Wait for them to let go, reward them letting go. If you need to teach your dog how to let go of something on cue, watch this video, that'll sort it out.